It is now time for student ambassador speeches. As in past years, ambassadors submitted a speech prior to the conference. Upon review, 6 of these speeches were selected to be read during this opening ceremony. We would like to call up the student ambassadors to the stage. May the ambassadors of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Japan, Mauritius, Oman, Russian Federation, and Sweden please approach the stage. Delegates of Bosnia-Herzegovina, please proceed with your opening speech.
Honourable President, distinguished delegates and esteemed guests, many would consider Bosnia, an ex-communist, ex-war-torn nation, to be one of violence, xenophobia and cynicism. There is in fact a word to describe this in Bosnian: Dayton, a synonym for neglect and despair. The Bosnian word Dayton comes from a town in Ohio where the peace accord of 1995 put an end to the most devastating conflict in Europe since the end of World War II. The most notable of the atrocities committed is the Srebrenica massacre. The United Nations declared the town to be a safe area for civilians, protected by several hundred Dutch peacekeepers. 2 years later, Bosnian Serbians overran the town on July the 11th, 1995. That evening, the Dutch commander drank a toast with the Bosnian Serb general at the latter's insistence as they discussed the fate of the civilians. "I'm a piano player," implored the Dutch officer in response to the general's threats. "Don't shoot the piano player." The pianist survived, but many of the refugees did not. The Bosnian Serbs later methodically massacred 8,000 Bosnian Muslim women, men and boys. It was the first and only case of genocide on the European continent since World War II. To say we should learn from our mistakes would be a profound betrayal to the victims of not only Srebrenica, but the whole civil war. We can, however, vow never to repeat them again. We must keep that in mind as we discuss Libya, Yemen, and the peace-building options in Syria. We must not forget Bosnia and Herzegovina. Finally, we must not go about this conference with Dayton, instead with optimism, sincerity, and a desire to secure a better future for those who look to us as the Bosnian people looked to the United Nations 21 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Japan, please proceed with your opening speech.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to warmly welcome all of you who are attending this year's Thimun Qatar Conference. It is our honor and our greatest pleasure to host students, faculty, and the like in this country and in the immaculate QNCC. It is conferences like these where we can put away our phones and tune out from social media, even if it's just for a few hours, and tune into what's happening in our world. As one of the United Nations' earliest members, Japan has been actively involved in numerous UN activities and is the United Nations' second largest financial supporter after the United States. Such strenuous efforts demonstrate firsthand Japan's pacified hopes for a peaceful world order. For over 20 years, Japan has tackled and shown its support for the issue of women empowerment and the rights of females all around the world, through contributing to the United Nations Development Fund for Women and helping to endorse strong political will and action based on partnership to realize gender equality. We hear about the Martin Luther Kings and the Mahatma Gandhis and even the Nelson Mandelas in the world, political figures whose actions sometimes mask our own. The reality of it is that these big names that we read about, watch documentaries about, celebrate, they were once small names, maybe even insignificant. As delegates and global citizens of this world, it is our right, as well as our duty, to be the Martin Luther Kings when the world doesn't bring us one on its own. It is also our duty not to abuse this right and to use it for the greater good. Attending a United Nations conference may not be the major key to becoming a renowned world leader or resolving every world issue, big or small, but it brings the world that little step closer. We are debating about real issues, real crises, real people whose lives we can potentially change. I stand before you, before this immense crowd of eyes, delegates of today, leaders of this era. I stand before you and think that everything, even the small things, even 2,000 people out of 7.3 billion can make a difference. I stand before you outside of this building, a high school senior, but for the next 3 days as the ambassador of Japan. So whether you joined us here today because you're passionate about debating global issues, or you've just come here to take 3 days off, learn something from this, as you should from every experience. And I only hope that what you take away is something you can carry forever, something valuable, something big.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Mauritius, please proceed with your opening speech.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and esteemed delegates. It is a privilege to be representing the Republic of Mauritius at Thimun, Qatar 2016 as an ambassador. Our delegation has strived to achieve both a rewarding conference and several international goals in the forthcoming days through diplomacy and international collaboration. Mauritius, a nation with diverse culture and valued heritage, acknowledges the importance of establishing a sustainable future in every country. This is crucial for a prosperous outlook of the health and welfare of the citizens, as well as the preserved culture of the country itself. Hence, Mauritius has long since followed a policy of active involvement in international relations without aligning itself in any particular bloc, and recognizes the great importance of the United Nations in the advocacy of peace, international security, and global development. Given our vibrant and thriving environmentalism, Mauritius's prime concerns lie in the protection of the endangered species in the nation, as their natural habitats are under threat due to widespread global issues like deforestation. We hope to strive and achieve a resolution to resolve this issue through the help of the UN bodies, in particular the Environmental Commission. In conclusion, the delegation of Mauritius hopes this conference will be coherent and has faith that every nation shall contribute and come up with practical and fruitful solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Oman, please proceed with your opening speech.
Secretary General, Honorable Chairs, fellow delegates, and most esteemed guests. The world around us has evolved greatly since the birth of the United Nations. Now, with the advent of our increasingly interconnected and globalized world, the time has come for us to fortify our efforts in rebuilding and upholding the mantles of truth, justice, and forgiveness. As a nation committed to the maintenance and growth of peace and prosperity, Oman has worked tirelessly to maintain friendly, diplomatic relations with all the nations that encompass both the Arabian Peninsula and the world. Even when under pressure from certain nations to cut ties with our allies, Oman has always persisted in the face of adversity as a bastion of diplomacy and cordiality for all. For this is not what all nations should strive for. Now more than ever, with the global threats of climate change, atrocious terrorist organizations, and other ongoing adversities, we must all promote policies and governance that will bring our nations closer together. We must strive to create a world where we can forgive each other for the wrongdoings of the past. A world where we can forgive each other and we can prevent new atrocities from occurring. A world where we are all active defenders of a peaceful global community. Oman is fully committed to pursuing this noble goal and invites all our fellow nations to work together in debate and walk hand in hand as allies and friends towards a more united, harmonious, and compassionate world. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Russian Federation, please proceed with your opening speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a true honor for the delegate of the Russian Federation to be standing before you at such a prestigious conference. It is a welcoming sight to see the youth of today solve the problems of the past to create a better future for us all. The theme of this year's conference is peace building and reconciliation. This delegate knows that there is not a better time nor more of a need for us to focus on this theme in order to maintain the peace and stability that we all wish to achieve. The Russian Federation is one of the most active members of the international arena. Our policies in Syria, for instance, reflect this. Our goals to keep Syria together as a unitary state have thus been successful. However, our support on the Assad government has not hindered the aid that we have given those that have been affected by the civil war. The Russian Federation has delivered 22 tons of aid in the region around the eastern Syrian city of Deir ez-Zor alone. The Russian Federation's vital roles in the civil wars of Ukraine and Chechnya have prevented casualties all over their respective countries. Aside from our foreign policies, we've also been working on our internal policies. The Russian Federation has also been working close with the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, the UNHCR, to focus on quality assurance measures and strengthening the national asylum system, including improving access to the system at the borders. The Russian Federation hopes that the international community can work towards a consensus to solve the problems that face our individual countries. Using this year's theme as the guidelines of our success and standing strong, we, as the United Nations, will be able to overcome any barriers that stand in our way. This delegate wishes beneficial debate to all of you in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Sweden, please proceed with your opening speech.
Honorable President, distinguished delegates, Eleanor Roosevelt, one of the architects of the United Nations, wrote, "One philosophy is best expressed not in words, but in choices." Today, I stand before you honored to represent Sweden, a nation with a strong voice in the world, deep roots in the past, and big hopes for the future. A nation that values idealism, but acts with pragmatism. Sweden has a great credibility in international landscape thanks to its strong engagement in foreign policy on issues such as common security, human rights, democracy, aid and development. This is the reason of Sweden's candidacy for a seat in the Security Council, in order to increase our engagement in multilateral cooperation, which is one of the cornerstones of our foreign policy. We never hesitate to extend a hand for peace, security, progress, and for safeguard the rights. This year, we are celebrating the 71st anniversary of the United Nations, but the world is uncertain than before. The presence of the UN is needed more than ever. Global crises and challenges require common solutions. In fact, because of the extension of global market, even fear, risks, insecurity become global. Today, we see a fair black picture in different parts of the world. Repression, instability, political corruption, horrific violence that continue to plague many regions in different continents, thousands of people that have been killed in different parts of the world, thousands of war victims that are fleeing from their country, the most dangerous weapons that are moving from the most politically unstable region, the extremist ideology and the international terrorism that throw a shadow on our future. Delegates, these are just a few of the great challenges that hang over the United Nations. Mr. President, exactly 71 years ago, the UN has clearly defined its mission: to advance global peace and security, to oppose tyranny, and to safeguard the rights of all the people. Recent events unfortunately show that the conditions for reaching this vision do not exist. Sweden, however, is ready to assume its share of responsibility and believes it is still possible to build an atmosphere for mutual cooperation and trust. Sweden will continue to dedicate all its efforts to find a common response to achieve a stable environment of peace and reconciliation in the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks for joining us.